report that could provide clues about the direction of monetary policy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, however, lower by 43 points, down 0.1%. S&P, as I mentioned, up 0.1%. NASDAQ up 49, a gain of 0.4%. The NASDAQ 100 index also up by 0.4%. Gold down 0.1%, $18.91 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.5%, $69.71 for a barrel of WTI. United Parcel Service shares down the most in 7 months after the Courier forecast profit margins that fell shy of expectations. UPS down now by 4.8%. Wholesalers are stocking up as America's economy roars back to life. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Inventories at the nation's wholesalers piled up in April for the 9th month in a row, a broad-based increase. Firms are stocking up as best they can, restrained by post-pandemic supply delays that are sending prices higher. Economists see the trend continuing in the months ahead. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
El Salvador has become the first country in the world to formally adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Bitcoin again up now by 8.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That David Weston is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. The Biden administration is focusing in on how to make sure people are paying their taxes when they make money on cryptocurrencies. Starting
All right, folks, good afternoon, and we're back. This is segment number 2. This is a segment on business, economy, and public policy. I'm usually joined by my colleagues, both Terry Coxum and Dr. Karen Green. But I'm flying solo today, but not necessarily solo because I do have a special guest with me, and I'm looking forward to to her special guest appearance on the program and her contribution because she is an extremely... For me, I am just so fascinated by her work. Her CV is incredible. She's an incredible leader, and what she's doing in this particular space, which we'll really emphasize today, is just short of incredible. I mean, it's just fascinating the work that she's doing. And her name is Betty J. Holland Hines. Who is Betty J. Holland Hines? She is a business strategist. She is, when we talk about a business strategist, she provides strategic business consultant to her client. Betty J. Hines is a strategic business consultant whose firm's primary focus is to work with CEOs and their executive management team. She has served as a corporate executive, is an entrepreneur, speaker, business mentor, and coach, and a certified group facilitator. Many know her as Strategic Business Connector. I like that. She is a connector for sure, and she's leading the path. As an entrepreneur, Ms. Hines was the former co-founder and owner of a property and casualty company that provided small business, homeowners, and automobile insurances to the underserved urban markets in the greater Baltimore and Washington, D.C. communities. Prior to her entrepreneurial ventures, Ms. Hines held executive and senior level management position at multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 companies overseeing underwriting operations with annual revenues exceeding $500 million. Ms. Hines served as a chapter chair / group facilitator for Women Presidents Organization, acronym WPO. As a chapter chair for the global organization, she facilitates group discussions on pressing business issues with women entrepreneurs who are presidents and CEOs of multi-million and billion-dollar businesses. Her chapter's members have achieved gross revenues ranging from $1 million to more than $1 billion. So, just like as I said earlier, she has an incredible CV. And let me stop there because I don't want to steal her thunder. Let me bring her on the program and say, Betty, welcome to the Marketplace Show, Reset and Jumpstart TV. And we are super excited to have you on the program this afternoon. How are you doing?
It is so great to be here. When I hear those words, that just tells me how old I am.
What? No.
It's like, oh, the time period. But it's all joy. It's been all joy.
I'm just fascinated at how you are, the role that you're playing in terms of really, truly empowering women and really elevating women. A lot of times in this country, we take for granted just the liberties and freedom that we have, because women around the world in other countries don't have the same privilege and freedoms that we have. And so the fact that we have what we have as U.S. citizens, but having someone like yourself as in that leadership position is just absolutely short of it's just fascinating. When you think of we as a country, right? We're talking about in the United States, when you think of the women population in this country, we're talking about women represent, my apologies, women represent 51%, at a minimum 51% of the U.S. population. I think the number is maybe as high as 53%, but you're talking about a significant population of the female representation in the United States. I mean, you guys rule. I mean, they say a man's world, but I don't think so. I think not.
Yeah, we do our best. However, it's nice to know that there's a collective group of us. Yes, women are out there. And what women are doing, because they've been the foundation of their family, and men lead the road. They're the spiritual leaders. They're the backbone of a family. But women are that nurturing individuals that know that business has to take place and has to get done. And we will find a way. So even with that, the numbers that you mentioned, we're out in the workforce. 51% of more than 50% women are in the workforce or have started businesses. And then when you look at you break it out by women of color are starting businesses over 50% more than non-minorities. So we're out there. You can call it a side hustle, or they're serious entrepreneurs growing their business. Yes, we're trying to make our mark on the world.
I listen. I think you're being very conservative and modest when you say you're putting your mark. I think the mark is more than just a mark. I think that you guys, this is your world, and I think in terms of just the whole leadership role, and to see more and more women at the helm of a lot of these Fortune 100 companies and women running their own businesses, it's just fascinating to see the accomplishment of women in this country, period. And like you said, when you start looking at the demographics of the breakdown of women, it's just short of just really incredible what you guys have done as in this country.
And it's important. It's important that we do that, because there needs to be a balance in a relationship with a man or a woman. And women know how to carve out a role for themselves in that relationship to take care of their family and to take care of their entire household. And that's what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to kind of share some background before we get into take a deep dive in, obviously, the work that you do, your organization, your various organization, the work that you do. Let's take a look at some of the data, what basically the impact that you guys are having, right? Women-owned businesses are growing twice the speed, 2 times as faster on an average than all other business nationwide. The number of women starting part-time businesses are often referred to as sidepreneurs. That's an interesting sidepreneurs.
Yeah, they used to call it side hustle. So sidepreneurs is more refined.
You know what? I'm going to go with you on that. I think that the sidepreneur sounds a lot better. Side hustle.
Kind of like.
It is saying that it's that segment is growing nearly twice as fast as the overall growth of women entrepreneurs over the past 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The ninth annual State of Women-Owned Business report finds firms owned by women of color grew at more than double the rate of all women-owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Women-owned businesses continue to fuel the economy and now represent 42% of all businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's nearly 13 million,
Mm-hmm.
employing 9.4 million workers.
Yep.
And generating revenue of $1.9 trillion.
Yep.
This is according to the annual State of Women-Owned Business report,
Mm-hmm.
commissioned by American Express. Obviously, most folks know who American Express is. They're a publicly traded company. They're a financial service company. In 2019, these U.S. women with diverse ethnic and geographic backgrounds started an average of 1,817 new businesses per day in the United States between 2018 and 2019, which is down only slightly from the record-setting of 2018 number of 1,821. That is just fascinating.
It is. And so with those numbers, we need to learn how to monetize that, because the numbers sound great. But when you break it down in terms of, we're working very hard, particularly the women of color working very, very hard. But if you dissect it and you intersect, what I'm very passionate about are the people of color, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, you will see that though we're starting the businesses, and this is also in the report that you reference, the average gross revenues for the women of color is 24,000 versus the non-minority or the white woman, 142. So that's a huge differential that we're confronted with. And so that is what the organization that I'm with, that I founded, and that's what the women are trying to, we shouldn't have to do a workaround. And that is what we're trying to educate the women on, and how can they scale and how can they elevate themselves in light of some of these disparities, the very clear disparities in corporate America, as well as they are for the entrepreneurs.
Wow. And you'd think, going back as maybe 50, 60 years ago, when this country was in transition, obviously that was right at the height of the civil rights movement in terms of, people fighting for basic rights, to do, just to be able to enjoy what it means to be U.S. citizens. And I remember, how women, pretty much were treated like the minority class, where you didn't have a lot of rights, and you were kind of sort of, you have that second class citizen treatment. And when you look at the 60 years time span, in your opinion, do you think that where women are today, are you pleased with the time that it's taken? Let's use the 60 years, or you think that more should have happened in less time?
Far more, less time. And people, I've walked on the backs of women ahead of me, because I sit back right now and just look at some of the situations today, and I will maybe get into that later about the voting rights. But you look at the situation today, it's like, it's not that we're entitled. We've earned it. We deserve it. We've worked very hard for it. So no, it should be. And I find, and I have flashbacks on my own career with corporate America, and why I left corporate America and became an entrepreneur. It's a constant battle. And it shouldn't be a battle. We're just looking for a level playing field. We know things aren't going to be equal, though they should be equal, but be fair. And so that is an ongoing battle that women of color, brown, Black women are confronted. And this is daily on all sides of the spectrum. So disappointed, yeah, but we can't. We have to stop being disappointed and turn that disappointment into action. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, in looking at some of the graph that I'm sharing here on the screen, it says that the analyst of business owner demographics, and it talks about early what I mentioned in terms of between 2018 and 2019, and you can clearly see the graph in terms of the performance, how women businesses performed over a couple of 2-year period, and seeing how things are trending, and also the issue of diversity. Diversity is while you look at the U.S. population in terms of women, period, and while you have non-minority who are women-owned business represent a significant portion of that, we're starting to see a very diverse ecosystem of women entrepreneurs and business owners really starting to emerge in the marketplace.
And there's a reason for that, because that is the best alternative. Small businesses, we know, is the backbone of this country. Small businesses. And I think women have tried so hard to strive in corporate America. And I'm not saying that's not a route, because not everybody is an entrepreneur. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. But they realize that they need to be an entrepreneur. They need to do something. And they feel that they have more control if they are running their own business, regardless of what the business is. And so that is why they work hard in starting their businesses. But in starting their businesses, by fast forwarding to owning their own businesses, there's some lessons in between that they have missed out on, that they haven't had exposure to. And so that's why it's a continued struggle for them to raise that capital. So these are the things that we need to go back and learn those lessons and get access to that information, because we're out there. We're not, there's no fear.
Absolutely.
There's no fear.
Let's take a look at this chart, which is really, to my point, what I mentioned earlier. Let's take a look at this chart. It says here that as of 2019, women of color account for 50% of all women-owned businesses. An estimated 6.4 million, women of color owned businesses employ 2.3 million people, 25% of total women owned businesses employment, and generate $22 billion in revenue. That's 23% of the total women owned businesses, right? Then the chart on the right, which tells an interesting story, it talks about closing the revenue gap for minority owned women businesses would have a huge impact on the economy. You look at the total 2019 revenue in parity achieved with white women, that's $1.4 trillion in comparison to in 2019 total revenue for minority owned women businesses at $422 billion.
Yes. And what does that tell you? That's a story in itself. I mean, this graphic that you're showing to me really is the story behind the woman of color, minority women, and what it's a constant battle. It's like you have to be much better, jump higher, run faster. That's not in business, but we can say that in sports as well. But that's something that is a constant in the back of the mind of women business owners and women entrepreneurs. And so what we have to maintain is not to become so frustrated that we give up. We can't afford to give up. But back to, if you look at that graphic, if there was parity between the non-minority or the white minority women we're doing, because women of color, when they have their business, they're going to hire other women. They're going to employ people. They're going to give them jobs. But if there was some parity, that number they're showing, the number of jobs that would increase, 4 million new jobs, 900, almost a trillion in revenue. So when we do have that opportunity, and if we were, and there's a lot of ifs, and that's what I want to take away those ifs. It should be when. But when the way it is right now with these numbers, where it's showing is that there's still disparity. And I know there are so many people that are in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion, but there needs to be a change, because the messaging, you can talk about it, you can show the numbers, but if there's inaction, it's not going to happen.
Wow, wow, and that is incredible. And I just want to kind of highlight and recap what you just said in terms of the difference it could have clearly when you look at some of the data. It says the disparity has an enormous effect on the U.S. economy. It says 4 million new jobs and $981 billion
That's a lot of money.
in revenue would be added if average revenue of minority-owned minority-owned firms match that of women-owned businesses. And just to kind of give a quick reference, it says here, as of 2019, African American Black women-owned businesses numbers are 2,681. I'm sorry, 2.6 million, or 21% of all women-owned businesses. It says have grown at an annual rate past year of 12% compared to 8% annual growth rate between 2014 and 2019. And it also says earn average revenue of $24,000 per firm versus 142,900 among all women-owned businesses. Whoa!
Now let me weigh in on that because that number is disturbing for me.
Oh my God!
I mean, it's like that. It's unconscionable.
It is.
But let's dive into what that number means. A lot of your minority women businesses will tend to gravitate to what they know best, and that's a service industry. A service that really doesn't generate a high revenue. It might be in a beauty salon, a nail salon. It might be in the hair, a cleaning service. These are very good businesses, but you have to do a lot of it to get to that kind of revenue. Whereas you're now minority, the white women, the businesses that they start will generate a higher revenue. They might be in IT services.
Right.
In those type of businesses, which demand a higher premium and revenue base. So we're having to work. Well, that's almost like what, 4 times?
Yeah,
Almost
it's insane.
Yes, insane. Almost 5 times as hard. Right. And that's where we need to change the narrative. We need to get these women who are very bright and intelligent, very entrepreneurial, into those businesses that will generate a higher premium for them. Because they don't have the fear in stepping out. It's just where to step out. Where do I start? And that is where they need a circle of supporters in educating them. That's great. If you had the business mind to put together and run a profitable service industry, how do we, because there's transferable skills. How do we transfer those skills into something that's going to generate more premium? And who can we pair you with to mentor you and to be an advocate for you to get into those other businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's take a look at some of the other ethnic groups as well, right?
Yes.
So we're talking African American women. Let's take a look at the Hispanic demographic, right? It says as of 2019, Latina/Hispanic women-owned businesses. That number is 2.3 million, or 18% of all women-owned businesses. They have grown at an annual rate for the past year of 10%, compared to 7% annual growth between 2014 and 2019. Also earned average revenue per firm. Wow, they're higher.
Yes.
At 50,900 versus 142,900 among all women. So you're saying even though we have Blacks and Latinos in the same ethnic group, minority group, you're seeing Hispanic doing twice as better in the income bracket than their peers in the Black owned women business group.
And may I weigh in?
Well, of course you can. Of course.
Weigh in. I want to say, oh my goodness, let me see how many years ago. Maybe it's over a decade ago or 15 years ago. I did become involved. It was one of the, don't speak a lick Spanish, but it became a involved in founding of one of the Hispanic chambers in the city. So what we would talk about, because we're trying to bring the unity, and I'm talking about the African American, Hispanic, and then you're going to hear about the Asian American community, because it's a cycle that all others are going through. Before, when the blacks came into the workforce back in the I want to say the early 70s, they talked about the affirmative action program. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding about the affirmative action program and how it was implemented. And I think find a term that's not sounding disparaging, but Black women we used to call it the flavor of the month. So they were really paying a lot of attention to Black women, and they didn't see them as a threat as they did Black men. And so though the women had to work hard and achieve, they were ready to push that affirmative action program. Then they start seeing some of the women come up into management, and they didn't want to have them cross that bridge into executive CEOs, because you know how many we can count on our right hand how many Black women have been CEOs in Fortune 50. But so then they start looking at the Hispanic community, and they were coming and says, "Oh, okay, now we need to pay our attention to the Hispanic community." And so they start working with the Hispanic community. You see a lot of things. You see the magazines. They have a lot of different chambers. The U.S. Hispanic Chamber, and they started growing. And then more people came in, and they were bilingual. And so then the government said, "Okay, let's work on the Hispanic women." Now what are they doing? It's the AAPI, the Asian American Pacific Women. So now they're saying, "Okay, now what can we do here?" The problem that our country has. Why can't you just do it all at the same time? Why does it have to be one or the other? Because what you're doing, and if you allow, they create a conflict between the organizations, and that can't happen. And that's what I try to, the Asian American Pacific community, Pacific Islander community, it can't, why does that have to be one or the other? Why can't it be all women, all brown and Black women? And that is just the scenario that they've gone through in terms of giving the funding. And you've seen the pendulum swing back and forth, depending on which ethnicity they want to sponsor and support, which I don't understand why the hands is doing well. So that's just my.
Yeah. Dad, it's when you really try to wrap your mind around it, it's a really complicated, and it shouldn't be. But the complexity of, ethnicity, race, ethnicity, gender, it all kinds is very convoluted, right? And how you can play with the numbers, and how you can strategically try to sort of, put more emphasis on one group and kind of neglect the other group,
Right.
because at the end of the day, when you say minorities, right, you have several groups in that minority bracket, right? And so, and unless you have an organization that is deliberate, and like you said, when you say minorities, it's not one or the other. It's it's all minorities. It's not, Blacks. It's not Spanish. It's not Asian. It's how do we achieve parity across the board for all demographics?
Absolutely. And that's the only way we're all going to win. It can't be one over the other. You can't pit groups against each other.
And that is what's happening. And clearly you see a lot of that. Byron Allen is fighting the fight in the media space, right? Talking about, the corporations are not spending their advertising dollars with minority media companies, right? So there's only the stacking of the cards. There's so many different barriers, right? To this ongoing problem we have in the marketplace. And so what I want to do is let's take a break, and when we come back, and we'll take a look at the data. But I want to switch to the work that you're doing. Not only as a business strategist, but the various women organization that you are part of, that you're leading, and exactly how are you addressing some of these issues? what is the plan? What is the solution to be able to mitigate some of these problems that we're talking about on the program? Okay, we'll come back after this break, folks. I have with me none other than Betty J. Holland Hines. She is a business strategist, but she is a dynamic, powerful woman of color, Black woman, leading her various organizations, but women in elevating women, empower women, period, across the board. And we're having a great conversation with here on the program, on the Marketplace Show, Reset, and Jumpstart TV. We'll be right back.
Small business is a part of all of us each and every day. It's where we eat, it's where we shop, it's where we go to meet our friends and colleagues. In the wake of COVID-19, our small business community desperately needs our help. We must do our part to help our local communities to once again thrive. We must focus our attention on the small businesses that are the fabric of our great nation. SureUp is a network of small business owners, their employees, and local consumers all working in unison to support each other. By creating incentives for consumers to think local before considering regional and national providers to fulfill their needs, we create local job opportunities and rebuild our communities. In addition, through AI-driven tools and machine learning, in just 5 minutes a day, SureUp assists business owners in improving their social media presence, which enhances their visibility among consumers and levels the playing field so that local businesses can better compete with large, name-brand online competitors. When local businesses leverage the SureUp platform, full-time and part-time employees, whether W-2 or 1099, are rewarded with a variety of voluntary perks and member benefit options. These include discounts on the things people do every day, access to low-cost, subscription-based telehealth and teletherapy, discounted prescription drug plans, connection to exclusive Prosper resources, and so much more. All for less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day. The Jumpstart Marketplace is here to support the health and wellness of individual employees, as well as the health of businesses in the local communities in which we live and work. We're all in this together, so join us as we reinvigorate our local community and improve the physical and financial health of working America.
Right now, 91 million Americans are financially overlooked. 48% have a fear of finance. 2 in 3 lack the ability to manage their finances. We solve this issue by combining financial literacy and financial management into one seamless app. 1. Have your financial goals align with your values. 2. Track your money and forecast how big decisions will impact your virtual accounts. 3. Build financial literacy at your own pace. Our competitors are rigid, disconnected, and impersonal. They represent the old way of doing finance. That's not who we are. We personalize your finances for you because we know one size does not fit all. We're democratizing personal finance. Join the tribe at Core Finance and at corefinance.com.
All right, folks, we're back, and this is segment number 2 of the Marketplace and Jumpstart TV, broadcasting live on WSCX Radio, broadcasting on La Mega Mundial, broadcasting on the Kalu Network, broadcasting on Tempo Network, cable TV, and on social media. We're having a discussion, taking a look at the impact, the economic impact of women, not just women, but women businesses in this country. And while we see the incredible leaps and bounds and progress they've made in that particular group, there is just a great deal of disparity, inequities within that space. I mean, it just doesn't end. I mean, you're trying to tackle a myriad of issues on a number of fronts, but the bottom line is, the cards are stacked so high when you talk about when you're in a particular group, and so hopefully we're able to as we take a deep dive into this conversation, and our special guest and contributor Betty J. Holland Hines being our guest on the program. She's a business strategist, so she knows the marketplace. She knows what's out there. She knows what's happening. What you're seeing is a screenshot of her website, and I just want to kind of take a quick look at some of her. You talk about she's well decorated. She's well decorated, honors and recognition, and I mean when you look at these are just some of the photos of some of the people involved in the organization. But when you look at just additional honors and awards. Winner, the International Adrian Hall Award for Breaking Down Barriers, awarded by Women Presidents Organization USA 2020. Girl Scouts of Central Maryland in December 2014. She's received recognition for serving on the nominating committee for Girl Scouts of Central Maryland from 2012-2014. Daily Records Maryland Top 100 Women from 2003 to 2006, and in 2012 inducted Circle of Excellence. Then you have City of Baltimore Certificate of Recognition, September 2012 from Mayor Stephanie Rollin Blake. Then there's Who's Who in Black Baltimore Inaugural Edition 2010. Extraordinary. Then there's also Extraordinary Service as Chairperson, Salvation Army Baltimore Area Command 2008, 2009, 2010. And, it just goes on and on and on. And so she's well decorated. The accolades are many. And so, Betty, you're doing great work. And let's talk a little bit about your organization. You first, for your area of proficiency, obviously, as a business strategist, and obviously lending your skill sets and expertise to these organizations that you're part of. Talk to us about that.
Sure. I am a professional facilitator. I've been certified. And why I decided to work with women, specifically women first. And then I went to just women from my community, women of color, because I didn't want them to have some of the missteps that I made. Coming from corporate America, we had all the experience and knowledge. We had 200 something years, 5 business partners, but it was our bad timing. We started our property and casualty company as the only African-American property and casualty company in the country. But it was during around Enron and during 9/11. So, 9/11 insurance companies. But there's also what we recognize, and it's something that I've learned, is that not everybody shares in your joy and in your blessings. And there were people who did not want us to succeed. So we ended up spinning off the business. So there were things that I wanted to teach the other women, such as trying to go out and raise capital. We did that. I've done, I call them the dog and pony shows, where you're in Wall Street and I know you've been on Wall. That's what you did, Wall Street. So I don't mean any indifference to you.
That's okay.
But you know what you put us through.
Yeah.
Out there looking for money.
Well, not me personally.
But done that. We're out there with the companies and trying to raise capital. So this is a couple of decades ago. So all we were asking for, in our mind, were 10 million. And that sounds like a lot of money. And it was back then. And we go to Chicago, and finally we were able to land $10 million from an investor. And we were just like, praise the Lord, hallelujah. We were so excited. But what we did not know, and that's because we didn't have the business acumen as an entrepreneur. We had it in terms of corporate, but not as an entrepreneur. Instead of asking for 10, we should have asked for 50. Because it's basically the same due diligence that you had looking for the 10 million before the 50. So the fact that we grew so fast because it was such a success, we found ourselves out on the road all the time, begging for dollars out on the road. So that all said, and then the incidents that occurred, within the country, globally, we decided to spin off the country, the business. So that is why I was just tending to my own business and was reached out by a founder out of New York asking me, because I had relocated like 7 different times. We had to do that as Black women coming up in corporate America. In order to get promoted up, we had to relocate. I mean, just uplift and move. So they said, hey, will you start this organization in Maryland? And these were all women. To get invited in, they had to have revenues of about $1 million. at least
Oh,
a
wow.
million for service, 2 million is product. So here I am. I'm like, sure, why not? Started then in the state of Maryland, and the name, they weren't branded, so I had to really start from scratch. Fast forward, had about 2 chapters at the time, one at first. But one of the things that we were going to our conferences, I recognized that I was only one of 2 Black chapter chairs out of about 85 at that time.
Wow.
And then when my members started coming to the conferences, the only people of color were my members. Not that, I had diversity in my chapters. I had, the brown and black, white women, but they noticed that. So my members were like, this is not going to work. Corporate sponsors were saying, hey, look, this doesn't look like our landscape. So fast forward, we launched what's called the Woman of Color and Achievement Award. And we traveled around to 23 different cities, trying to bring to the attention of women of color. I just felt the passion. Y'all need to hear about this, because there was information, and that's one of the challenges that I see is lack of information. There was information shared in these sessions that if I was with other Black organizations, I would never heard about. So I kept my toe in the water. I kept there because I enjoyed working with the women and seeing their businesses scale, but also to be able to get that information and bring it back to my group. So finally, with the numbers that are here, but also with the National Women Business Council, when you take a look at the women that make $1 million, because that was the ticket of admission. You had to have gross revenues of $1 million. How many of people of color do you think were there? All women. There's barely 3% of all women that are at that $1 million and above. And when you break it out by ethnicity, we're not even 1%. We're like a fraction. And then when you break it out by Black women, it's.
I even before you said it, I knew what you were going to say, and I'm shaking my head. I'm like, not even.
Yes. So I had to take a hard look in the mirror, and I said, okay, I'm doing my part with my chapters in terms of diversity, but what about the other 97%? And so when I start looking and doing more, and these are numbers that I knew, but it just didn't hit me impactfully until I realized, we people of color, brown, Black people, we get stuck around 100 and 250,000. And why is it? That's what I said earlier about the service industries. We get stuck and we get frustrated. And as a result of that, I said, no, I've got to do more. This was my passion and this is my purpose. And I had to take it into action and launched WEW, WEW, Women Elevating Women. And we went around to a couple cities to beta test it. And people were just saying yes. And then November 2020 launched the first WEW crew. And and I have to share with you, one of my clever board members came up with the acronym. We have CREW, but when we talk about the CREW, and this is so true, the C stands for clarity. In bringing the women together, they get a better understanding of the essential elements that they need to run their business. What you got a business, what are things that you need? Because oftentimes there's opportunities out there, but they don't understand how to get to those opportunities. So that's what they provide. Not that I can provide all the resources, but I have enough people in my network that I can bring to them to provide them those resources. And we talk about refinement. A lot of them have the tools, but they don't know what to do with the tools. They might have the certifications, but they don't know what to do with the tools. And so that is why all of my sessions sit around what I consider my 5 pillars of success.
I want to take a look at on your site. You have a thing called the 5 C's.
That's it.
And I want to kind of put that on the screen so folks can see it, right? As we go through this 5C, right? 5C.
Right.
And
yes, the 5 C's are right there, and we're refining it as we get the women. I'm refining it, but those are the 5 C's.
Those are the 5 pillars of success.
The 5 pillars of success.
So that's connect, cultivate, collaborate, communicate, and courage.
Yes, and just to share with you what the connect is all about. The connect gets into what I call the value of social capital. one of the things that I found in working, I've been working with women for over 16 years, and particularly the high-end, multi-billion-billion-dollar women and the women of color, is making those business connections. We don't understand the value in having those connections. You were a connection. And we don't embrace those relationships. And how do you do that? How do you have the right connections? You're not trying to connect with everybody, but what are the right connections? And that's what I conduct in our monthly meetings. One of those pillars being connect. How do you connect with people? And then we talk about collaboration. Women have this label, which I don't like to fess up to when you talk about collaboration, but we're not known for collaborating well. We got to change that.
Really? What? Hold up. Stop the press. Women don't like to collaborate?
I admit it. And before you can improve, you got to recognize where you fall short.
Wow.
So now see, don't run with that.
No, wait. You talk about the 5 pillars, right?
Right.
Which that makes up the 5 C's, which are the 5 pillars for success. You got to be able to confront these demons.
You do.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know that you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable saying that, putting it out there. But if that's part of the problem, you got to put it out there.
It is.
You got to call it for what it is.
It is. I tell you, I've seen it. I have stories about it. And what really smacked me in the face is when I was conducting one of our, pre-COVID, we were in person in a city. The young lady that I had, she was part of my Cultivate, and I'll come back to the Cultivate. The young lady said, and we were having a dialogue, and she said, I really like what you're doing. She said, after all, we need you older people. Now, keep in mind, she was like 17 at the time. And she's right. And she'd been an entrepreneur since she was 8. She says, we need you older people. Because basically when I was coming out the womb, we had
she could have said it a little better.
But you know what? I have learned to accept and the way people deliver messages. If there's a meaning, there's something important to take away. So I took it, and she says she says, you know what? There's enough sky out there for all of us.
No kidding. No kidding.
And I said, and that's a message that women, I feel, specifically the women of color, need to hear. There's enough sky out there for all of us. I'd rather have 1% of a billion than 1% of nothing. So, there's enough out there for all of us. And that really is something that needs to be, not all women. I don't want people calling me up saying, I know how, good for you, sis, if you know how to do that. But in terms of businesses, in terms of collaborating, if you're going after a contract, you don't have the bandwidth, bring somebody else on. Men do it all the time. You guys will sit down and say, hey, look, I got this deal, and I'm not really up to speed on this piece of it. And you look for someone to fill that void. We don't.
What?
We try to do it all. This is just for me working with the women at this level.
Now I understand why the 5 C's are so paramount. Because connect and collaborate. Because I noticed you went from connect right into to collaborate.
Because they're together. They're collaborate. Because I'm seeing it. I've seen it.
Right, but the key in connection is the ability to communicate that opportunity and the need to want to collaborate.
Yes,
and you have to have the ability to be able to communicate that.
And
so communication is so critical to the process because you guys are not having that conversation. You're not like you're saying, like the men, they can sit around and say, well, I'm working on this deal. I'm working on this project. And, I'm not sure how I'm going to fill this void. That's a communication issue. Just communicate it. Say it. Say what is it that's in front of you that you guys can have a conversation with and said, how can I, as I just explained what the opportunity is, how can we come together to put our collective?
And there's a fear. There's a fear of being vulnerable, and it's okay to be, some vulnerability is okay. It's okay because what you're disclosing is where there's a weak link, and someone that has strong in that area, bring them on. And those are some of many of the conversations that we have in terms of collaboration. And that's why I have accountability partners. But we talk about that. And you're hitting on communicate. I tell some of the women and even some of the women that were doing that 200, 300 million, it's like, look, let me tell you something. When I talk about communicate, I put branding underneath that as well. So look, this selfie and then you with the family picture, that doesn't work. Go ahead and get some coins and get a professional photographer to take your picture, because that's what people are going to see in terms of your personal branding and your business branding.
The work, obviously, the work that we are coming together, in terms of the CASE initiative, I'm starting to realize how large, how big of a problem we have. I knew it was big, right?
Yeah.
But, when you really kind of pull it back, okay, and you got to go back to all the way back to basic, just to basic, where there are just structural deficits across the board, in terms of this whole, how we see ourselves and how we see each other, and the mentality, the mindset, in terms of how we, process information, and how we, understand how do we go about seeking out that opportunity. These are just, and it really comes down to, we need to have a different conversation. We really haven't. We have to have, and it is, and the reason why this exists, because it's clear that people are not having this conversation.
They're not.
And we need to be able to have this conversation day in, week out, monthly. We need to have this ongoing conversation, because if we don't tackle these issues, again, they're not going anywhere.
They're not.
There's a mindset that says, just the way it is, and you kind of accept it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, you don't have to do that.
No. And I'm going to quickly touch on these other ones because I feel they're very important. And that's courage. And when I say courage, I'm not talking about big and strong. I'm talking about women need to have courage to take care of their health and their wealth. Programs like this, watch programs like you're talking about the economy. Learn, study to show yourself approved. You need to be able to take care of your wealth and your health. Because if you don't take care of your health, because we'll always put yourself on the back burner, you're not going to have the wealth. And then lastly, but not last, is cultivate. We have to learn how to reach back. We have to continue to develop our young people. And that's what I mean, cultivate. Why can't you, when you have your business, bring that person on, let them walk side by side, show them this is what a business is all about. Let them see where you've made the mistakes and how they can avoid these things. But we get information, we have a tendency, we want to keep it all to ourselves. I mean, it's like the auntie with the famous recipe. She don't want to give it to anybody, and then she, oh, you take the best sweet potatoes. She's not going to share it, and then she dies. It's in the grave. So how are we going to continue your legacy? You can't have a legacy if you don't share it and teach people how to be involved in it. So, so these are my 5 pillars of success, and I do it with my groups, and it's coming along fabulously. Our first crew, we have 24 members in our first crew, and the aggregate revenues is 25 million. I take people on with at least 6 figures. So another way of saying, I take them from high school, grad school, and PhDs. I don't, but I can refer you, and I have people in my group that do startups. So I'm not doing the elementary and middle school, but I've done that, and there's other people who can do it better. So I'm happy to share this.
Clearly, it's not an issue of lack of capital. You often hear businesses complain not having access to capital, right? When you look at the marketplace and you look at the different demographics, whether it's obviously we're talking about women-owned businesses, and not only just women-owned businesses, but women of color. The different ethnic groups in that demographic. But when you think of Black, Hispanic, Asian, and others in that space, each group exceeds $1 trillion. Okay, so when you say black, you said Hispanic, you say Asian, you say women, and you could go on and on and on. You're talking about at least over $5 trillion. $5 trillion. And so the money is there.
That's exactly
We're,
it.
we're just going about it the wrong
Don't know
way.
where to look to get it. Exactly.
Okay. And in terms of how we execute and how we generate this kind of wealth, and how do we then acquire and reinvest that wealth?
Exactly.
That's the fundamental problem we have, because it's not the big corporations get it. The big corporations understand they're going to produce what we need. Okay, because they understand there is $5 trillion out there of goods and services that the consumer and the marketplace needs, and we're the one that's generating the revenue, right? Because we're spending our money.
What we talked about in defense of women is that there is access, but that financial assistance that they need, it needs to be, and they need to learn, but it needs to be presented in a way that is comprehensible, because it's a lot. It's a lot of information. And so that is what I do in my group. In my peer advisement groups, I put you in that confidential setting where there's no judgment. And these people that look like me, you can ask those questions. And there's just a comfort level in asking those in a safe haven.
Yeah. Time flies. I got to tell you, Betty, time flies. Well, the good part is that Betty and I are working together on various projects, and so this is really just, if for lack of a better description, this is the coming out, if you will, the introduction of Betty to our audience, right? To our viewers, to our listeners on radio, on viewers on television, on wherever. So clearly, the task at hand is daunting. It is a lot, and we have a lot of work to do, and so this is just really the formal introduction of Betty J. Holland Hines, the business strategist, and when you talk about being a strategic thinker, this is who she is, and that's the skill set, that's that gift and talent she brings to what we're going to do, because we're going to change the narrative.
We are.
We're going to change the narrative. We're going to engage. We're going to have a different engagement in the marketplace, because if we don't, we're going to continue having this problem. And so, Betty, I'm looking forward to you coming back. This is the first installment of the many conversations we're going to have, particularly when we roll out MBC, which is markets, business, and consumer, in terms of the different contributors to the program, and on the myriad of discussions and topics we're going to have. So I really appreciate you coming on the program this afternoon to really allow me to introduce you to the audience.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Anthony, that you continue to lift as you climb. So keep elevating.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, we are going to, coming up next is segment number 3. That's a special broadcast. We're going to take a look at the U.S.-Taiwan bilateral trade agreement, which is right now making its way through Congress. There is strong bipartisan support folks. That's like an oil and water here. Bipartisan support in Congress for a U.S.-Taiwan bilateral trade agreement. And the reason why you're hearing this is because while there are these different agreements in place, countries either form multilateral trade agreements with multiple countries, or they do one-on-one with each other. And so this is more of a formalization of a BTA, a bilateral trade agreement between the United States and Taiwan. And then this is a special broadcast on that discussion. Betty, we'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you. Thank you much, Anthony.
All right.
Goodbye.